Hello, everyone. You are listening to the C Squared podcast with Corey, Curtis, and Aaliyah today. Joining us as our guest host, we are back with Mr. Pedro from A&P Reacts. He's joining us again with a whole host of new stuff to talk about. So before we get started, I do just want to say thank you for joining us again. This is the third time you've been back on the show, and we're super excited to have you again.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be on this show with you wonderful people.
Says the man who's probably trying not to get axe murdered right now. No.
It's okay. I'm the nice one, so I'll try and keep them in line.
How can you keep us in line if you're nice though? Like you gotta be firm. Can't be nice and keep us in line at the same time.
Good point. Good point. Good point.
Normally they have a bad cop, good cop thing happening. So now we have three. So it's like good cop, bad cop, indifferent cop. I don't know who's
who's the good cop and who's the bad cop, Pedro? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know. I think I don't know. That's a good question. I'm just throwing it out there, and I'll leave it up to you guys to decide who's the good cop and the bad cop.
He doesn't want to answer.
We can decide at the end of the episode. So diving right into some of these questions, I noticed you guys did a reaction to Blind Channel, which is that band that almost won in Eurovision, which is like a very kind of a good indication of like trends in heavy music and where it's going. So I wanted to ask you, in what ways do you think heavy music or metal has changed over the decades, and for better or for worse?
Well, I mean, if you go back, Lordi won that same competition a bunch of years back for Finland. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to have a band like that win that sort of competition. It's rare, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Normally, being European and following Eurovision for many years as a kid growing up, it's more a little bit of a hipster contest, to be honest with you. They tend to go more with bands that are like avant-garde, like really nerdy stuff. It's not very often that you see a band like Blind Channel or even Lordi win or have some sort of buzz. I think the metal world has changed a lot. I mean, it's always evolving. I mean, it's never really stopped evolving. Obviously, there's certain genres that have stayed pretty true to their original form all the way throughout. But as a global musical phenomenon, I think it's been always moving and always looking for the next best thing. Having said that, Blind Channel is not really doing anything that hasn't been done before. They're like a little bit of the Linkin Park of Finland, if you will, minus Mike Shinoda. So there's a little bit of that reinventing that new metal sound. They're also not the only band doing that now. Tetrarch is also another band that's bringing back that new metal sound into the forefront. I think if there's perhaps a more of a change in the metal sound today is the inclusion of a lot of keyboards and synthesizers, specifically with melodic metal bands and power metal bands, going a little bit perhaps away from the power riffs and from the guitar-driven sound and depending a lot more on synthesizer and keyboards. I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of that movement. I like it, but I don't know. The jury's still out on that one, but I really see a trend these days. You see a lot of bands going towards that synthesizer sound, that increasingly using more and more of it to make more volume, to make bigger tracks, more cinema. And they're not even necessarily symphonic bands, but I just see a lot more of that, and that seems to be a trend that is going and it's picking up steam.
For sure. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was going to say, what do you actually think of that trend though? Do you like, are you into it or what?
I'm not a huge, I can take it in certain doses, obviously. Sure. Also depending on who the band is. A band like Beast in Black does it really well, but it's not necessarily my cup of tea. I think it dilutes a little bit of everything else that is happening. I like to see the keyboards more used as a layer within the sound, specifically if you're not a symphonic band that needs to depend on them. If you're a power metal band and you want to use them to create melody, to create that cinematic vibe, I'm okay with it. But I want to see it more as a layer. I don't want to press play on a power metal record or even a melodic metal record and have to like really dig deep to hear the guitar riffs, to hear the bass, even to hear the drums, because it's just like synths all over the place. And it really bothers me when the band doesn't even have a keyboard player. that is where I start to really become a little bit of I don't know. I become really upset about that kind of stuff. I think if you're going to go down that path of overly using symphonic elements and keyboards and synthesizer, at least hire some guy to play the damn thing, or a girl, whoever. Just hire some people to play the keyboards and don't depend just on a laptop.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that applies for sure. I mean, even how do you feel about that within the symphonic metal genre as well? Do you think, because a lot of times like the guitarist or somebody else is composing the orchestration. So do you feel the same way about those types of bands for live shows? They should bring on a keyboardist?
To me, it would be like going to a show and instead of a drummer, you have a drum machine playing the drums, right? Like, is that really what we've come down to? Like, is that really what I want out of a live performance? I want the record to sound, not to sound the same as live because it's never going to happen, but I want the music to be well represented in the live setting. I don't want to be listening to the music at home and then go see the live show and be depending on computers and background stuff to give me what I got on the record. Use real musicians. I mean, I don't think I'm asking for too much. And I think it's a trend that just keeps on growing, and fans are accepting of it. And because fans are accepting of it, bands are getting away with it. And I think at the end of the day, if you're just creating records to put out music is one thing, but if you're a traveling band, if you're a touring band, and you're playing live shows in front of millions of people, I think you have to give the fans a little bit more than just a computer in the background playing symphonic elements. I agree with you. I see some guitarists who are composers in the bands creating music that's really keyboard driven, which is really interesting for me. I could see that happening if you have the keyboardist in the band being the main composer, like in Nightwish. That I can see. But if you look at Nightwish, for example, the keyboards don't overshadow the vocals. They don't overshadow the guitars. They don't overshadow the drums. The music is a lot better put together. The composition of the songs is a lot more intricate, that everything has its place, everything has its room. And it's not like they're playing backing tracks.
Go ahead.
I wanted to speak. I just want to hear Aaliyah's thoughts on this briefly, since Aaliyah does play symphonic metal. I'm just curious about this. I'm sorry. I just had to break that in.
Actually, I'm sure that Nightwish uses some backing tracks because they can't play all of the parts that are occurring in the music, but Tomas is playing the most important ones on stage. So, but yeah, I'm in a band and I do not compose the keyboard parts. I will be playing them live, basically. So, yeah, I was curious to hear your thoughts on that. I would say I agree overall. It's good to have, I think it kind of plays into the idea a little bit of where is the live show going? Not only given the current times, of course, live shows in general being limited, but the times as far as digitally, a lot of people are moving digitally and only doing like singles or doing digital releases or what have you. And I've even heard bands say that they don't even really see the value in playing live shows anymore. What do you think about that?
I don't know. Okay, so that is a really convoluted question that needs a little bit of breakdown. I personally like something that, for example, of Mice and Men did this year. They released 3 EPs, and then at the end of the year, they put all 3 EPs together and they released a full-length album, which is made up of those 3 EPs that were released throughout the year. I like that idea because you have to look at from a financial perspective. Nobody buys albums anymore, or very few people buy records anymore. People buy singles. They listen to music on Spotify. So you have to be creative. I honestly wouldn't mind a band releasing a single every single month of the year, and then at the end of the year, putting them all together as a full-length record. Perhaps that would work better if it's a concept album, because then you have almost like you're watching a TV series with every month there's going to be a new episode, and you're like, oh, I wonder where the story's going to go next. So nobody's ever done that, at least not that I know of. And I think that would be a really cool concept, specifically if the band is going with a concept album. Now, I like what the Mice and Men have done. And I was worried about it because I didn't know how are these 3 EPs going to merge together as an album, because I'm an album guy. I listen to an album from beginning to end, and I need to feel like there's a sense of continuity within that record. Otherwise, I'm pretty much listening to a compilation at that point, and I'm not a big fan of compilations because it feels a little bit broken, feels a little bit chaotic. So I understand the dynamics from a financial perspective to do it that way. I think it really works well for the band, and I think it's something that Insomnium did a little bit of that as well. They released an EP this year where they released each single song individually as a single, and then they put them all together as an EP. I think more and more we're going to see stuff like that happening. I think bands may not want to do it, but I think they're going to be forced to do it because it's going to become financially viable for them to do. And at the end of the day, it's a business. Now, as far as the live shows, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, bands these days, their bread and butter is on touring and merchandise. They're not making money on Spotify. They're not making money on selling records. If you look at Bullet for My Valentine, their latest record did really poorly on sales in that first week, but they were one of the highest streaming bands on Spotify. So which one is worth more? So I think as a business, we have to really adjust how we perceive success in these modern days. I think there has to be a readjustment of what is considered a successful release as far as an album goes. And I think Bullet for My Valentine is the perfect example of this modern idea that, you know, we didn't sell well. Does that mean the album is garbage? Does that mean that they didn't do well if they're streaming so many streams daily on that record? So I think we have to reevaluate that whole thing. And they're selling out arenas and they're selling out big shows and they're touring. And I think that's where the money is. I know a lot of bands that tour North America that on that cycle of that album, they made zero profit. And all the money that they made was actually from the touring and from the merchandise that was sold. And let's not forget that the venues take a cut of that merchandise as well. A lot of the things that fans don't know about, and I think there has to be this removal of this barrier that bands have, that they feel perhaps that if we let people know too much of our business, it degrades the image of rock and roll stars. So they portray to be something that they're not, so that they can create this aura. Bands these days are getting killed, and the venues are taking a cut on the merchandise, and the money that's being made, it's really few and far in between. I know bands that are releasing their 13th album, and only now they're receiving royalties from their third record. So because they had to borrow money from the labels for music videos, for touring, for whatever the case might be. You have smaller bands buying into bigger tours just to get that opportunity for exposure. The business is rotten. It is really rotten from the inside out. And I feel that with this pandemic has speed up the process of decomposition of the music business in general, as far as metal bands are concerned. And I think the labels have to reassess what they're doing. I think the bands have to reassess what they're doing. And in my opinion, I think they have to let the guard down and let their fans know that, hey, you know what? I'm a school teacher when I'm not touring because this is the only way I can pay for my mortgage. And if you want me to be able to continue to make music that you enjoy listening, then you have to buy the record. You have to come to the show. You have to buy a t-shirt. Listening on Spotify is not paying the bills. So I think bands have to be on the forefront. They have to be honest and remove this idea, this aura that we're all rock stars. And if we let our fans know that on the side I'm a gardener, it loses a little bit of its appeal. It's life. Sorry, it's a long-winded answer.
No apology needed. I value, and everyone listening to this podcast will get value out of what you've just said. Corey, is there any follow-up that you have on that topic?
Oh no, that was super thorough. So
Do you want to move on to a different one in particular?
I was gonna say, you made the questions, girl. You lead the topics.
Are we going to talk about that band that the lead singer took a piss on the dude's face? Are we talking about that?
We can talk about that if you want to.
We can.
What's your guys' take on that?
My personal take is that it's hard to explain. I think it was good for them for publicity wise, and I think they probably should have just let it ride out. That's my own personal opinion on it. Maybe these two don't agree with me on that, but I think who heard of them before? Nobody did. So they probably got a huge uptick in streams and stuff. That's my own opinion.
Huge uptick in streams. But
You got that one, eh?
Yeah, that was a really good one. Nice one.
What's your thought, Pedro?
I'm with you. I think this was a publicity stunt, but the moment that you come out and you say it was an accident, I mean, how can it be an accident? You invited somebody on stage, you drop your pants, you do your business. This is not an accident. You know what I mean? Like, I've peed my pants before, and it didn't happen that way. You know what I mean? Like, that was no accident. So I think that they should have just either not say anything at all and just ride out the wave of publicity that they're getting. Because at the end of the day, that's the reason why they did it. Like, I mean, like, don't take me for a fool here. So I think them coming out and saying it was an accident, we apologize, but it kind of dilutes it a little bit. It would have been like Ozzy Osbourne apologizing to the bats after he ripped the head of the bat off. I mean, just freaking do it and run with it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
well, yeah, because I didn't really understand the purpose of the apology other than to maybe spread the word a bit more. That was it. Because otherwise, it's like, yeah, why? Like, what the fuck was the point in that? I don't understand that. It was pretty goofy to me.
I just thought it was really weird that they did this during a cover of Rage Against the Machine. I mean, if you're going to piss on a fan's face, I would expect that to happen when you're doing a cover of R. Kelly, not Rage Against the Machine. I mean, I was a little bit surprised. I just was a little bit surprised.
Did you listen to their music yet? I haven't.
No, I've only seen the video of that performance. That's it.
Same. But I'm sure they had a huge uptick in streams. But Aaliyah, what was your opinion of this whole thing, just out of curiosity?
I would say it was I definitely think it was weird that they apologized for it, because you should have just, if you're going to do something that crazy, just run with it, like Pedro said.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to reflect on any long-term benefit to the band. Like, yeah, maybe you'll get an uptick in streams, but how many of those people are going to stick around? I actually was watching Nick Nocturnal's stream on where he was talking about it, and talking about they had a huge spike in Google Trends as well right after it happened, and it was that same thing where it's like, well, yeah, maybe people are searching for them, but neither of you have listened to their music. I haven't listened to their music,
but I know who they are. I know who they are now.
That doesn't matter. If you're not streaming music, if you're not buying their merch, like, it doesn't matter if you know who they are. They're not getting any benefit from it.
Well,
they're not getting any real long-term benefit from it.
Well, the lead singer, I don't know if you guys know this, but the lead singer is going to do a solo tour, and I have some friends on Facebook saying they're going to catch their show when she comes to their town, because they just out of pure I don't know, curiosity, I guess. Yeah. So I don't know. Know. Maybe she gets something out of it. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I might not recommend it to people to do a shock rock thing like that just to get publicity, but yeah, maybe they'll have some benefit from it.
I want to hear Corey's take on this, though. She hasn't said yet. Let's hear her take.
I wouldn't have come out and apologized. I think it's asinine that there were even any hints of charges being pressed against them, because two consenting adults doing what two consenting adults do, like, I mean, whatever. Yeah. It's not like they were like straight up having sex on stage or anything like that for public indecency charges or whatever. And again, two consenting adults doing their thing. I don't care none.
Exactly.
I think they should have taken even a little step further. The next show, they should have came out all dressed like the little kid from It with a raincoat and stuff like that. Like, just play off of the whole thing.
Exactly.
Like, if you're going to do it, then just freaking take it all the way to the bank. Just make a shtick out of it,
Yeah, it's like tried to do the shock rock thing and then got like freaked out by what it actually entails when you do that, and started to backpedal, which if you're going to do something like that, lean into the skid.
Yeah. Lean into the skid. Yep.
Lean into the skid.
Okay, Aaliyah.
Don't afraid to get wet.
Aaliyah, you got to get us back on track.
Well, I mean, it was on the topic to ask about how you started your show from takedowns to breakdowns, which you spoke about this exact topic and some other controversial ones. How did you get started doing that show?
Yeah, we don't shy away from controversial topics on that show. I think that's the whole point of that show. We actually have a topic coming up soon on that show, which is, can you separate the artist from the art? And it was a really interesting conversation between my son and I, because we completely see it completely different. He's like, the music is one thing, the artist is another. And for me, it's like, I don't know, man. There's some lines that I'm not willing to cross, or if the band crosses it, I'm not willing to partake in their music going forward. But the idea from that show was really the label, the Out of Line Music. They reached out to us about a year ago, and they said, we love your own thing that you're doing on YouTube. The two of you are funny. You guys have great content and stuff like that. Would you guys be interested in doing a show on our YouTube channel? And we're like, yeah, like, what do you guys have in mind? They're like, what do you have in mind? And I'm like, I don't know. You guys are pitching the idea to us, and now I have to come up with the idea. Like, so I said, why don't we just do something completely different from what we do on our own channel and just talk about whatever different topics every week, and just come up with like either topics that are things that are happening in the music business, or something like completely like out of the blue. Like, I think we have a show coming up where we turn Sabaton songs into porno titles by changing like one word or something like that. So that's going to go really well with the Sabaton fans. So, but I think that's the whole point of that. It's not for us to be taken seriously. We don't take ourselves serious. And I think it's to use music as a backdrop to just have fun with it. And the thing that's the most interesting for me with that show is that some of the fans from these bands are total simps. I mean, like, it's incredible. You cannot say one thing. Like, we had a video about Nightwish, about 10 reasons why Marco left Nightwish. Obviously, they're all jokes, and people were taking it so seriously, like it was the Bible or something. It's jokes, people. Learn how to laugh, take a joke, and move on. So I think that's one of the things that I didn't think it existed as much as it does in the metal community, which is this idea of guarded topics that cannot be touched or cannot be talked about. Metal has always been about breaking boundaries and being the outsider and doing things by our own laws and by our own rules. And now we've gone into this era where metalheads are creating boundaries and rules on what can be said and what cannot be done. I think it's asinine. I think it's completely asinine. So that's one of the things I've learned from having that show, and we're having a lot of fun doing it, and hopefully we don't run out of topics, or the label doesn't think we're a bunch of idiots and cancels the show.
I love the show. I think it's great. And it's agreed that it's important not to take yourself too seriously in the metal scene. Yeah, go ahead, Curtis.
Okay, so let's just go back into this potentially controversial topic here, since we like to go off the rails here. So, Pedro, what would be the line that you would say bands should not cross, just out of curiosity?
For me, it came down to pedophilia.
Fair.
If a member of the band, and I'm not saying accused, because these days I'm still a believer that you're innocent until proven guilty, and that's I believe in that, and nothing is going to change my mind. But if it's proven in the court of law that you are a pedophile, there's no way I can wear a shirt. There's no way I can even listen to a song. Doesn't matter how much I loved that band in the past. Doesn't matter how much of a fan I was in the past. That is a line that cannot be crossed in my books. Everything else, I think I'm like, there's some gray areas. There's some things that I'm slightly uncomfortable with, but but to me, I think that was the only one that both of us, my son and I, agreed that that's like a no-go. Yeah. Other ones, we kind of like really debated about it. I think he's better able to separate than I am. And there's certain things that I'm not really able to separate from, like being in an interracial marriage and having a biracial child. We've been victims of racism. So if I find out that the band has a neo-Nazi member, it's really hard for me to listen to their music regardless of how good they are. On the other hand, my son, who's also been a victim of racism, sees it completely different. It's like, well, I don't care. If I like the song, I'm still going to listen to it. And I was completely shocked that I was a lot more sensitive towards it than he was, when I always felt they should have perhaps been the other way around. It just goes to show that everybody has a different scale and a different moral compass when it comes to music and their favorite artists. Because his view was, what about if it's your absolute favorite band of all time, and you find out that the dude, and I was like, okay, maybe it depends. How long was he in the band? Did he write the songs? Was he just like a hired gun? Like, then you start bringing all of these things. But I think the only one that we agreed that was a no-go was the pedophilia. Outside of that, there's an argument to be made. Like we even brought up As I Lay Dying as an example, because he hired somebody to kill his wife. I said, come on, anybody who's been married on a long-term relationship, it goes both ways here. Who has never thought about getting rid of their partner? Come on, Curtis. Come on.
I'm not even married to him, and I think about getting rid of Curtis on a daily basis.
Thanks, Corey. I'm not answering this question.
I just think we've all been there. We've all been driving in the car, look at our partner sitting beside us saying some stupid shit and thinking, my God, if I had an eject button right now, I would press it. So, come on, he did his crime, he did his time. Can we move on from this? Like, is the guy now going to carry that cross for the rest of his life, that he was a moron and try to hire the wrong person to off his wife? I mean, come on. I think we all need to just kind of move on from these things and stop standing on an anthill claiming that we are in a mountaintop. We're not better than anybody else. We all have skeletons in our closet, and we all have our own moral compasses. But I find that the people that tend to carry that moral high ground more and more are the ones that have the least amount of morality to begin with.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that. So just on that topic, so what about, because you said there's the one line you won't cross, what about some of those 60s, 70s types bands that were known to do that? Because that's where I have a bit of a problem, because you got like guys like Jimmy Page, and I go,
yeah,
you know what
tough.
I mean? I know.
It is tough. I mean, but I also think you'll have to look at things in the context in which they were done, in which they were made, right? Like, if I look back at my grandparents, for example, did they say some racist shit back in the day? Oh, yeah, definitely they did. You know what I mean? So am I going to hold that against them for the rest of their lives? I have to put in context in the time in which they were raised, the mentality that existed at that time, and the settings that surrounded them. They were not raised in 2021. You know what I mean? Like, we cannot hold people accountable for something they did in 1970 based on the moral standings of 2021, when in 1970 those moral standings didn't exist. It was normal. You know what I mean? So I think we have to keep that a little bit in mind when we start to like backtrack and try to cancel people for something they did 40 years ago.
Well, that's actually something that was brought up in an article that I was reading not that long ago, that we have unprecedented access to the past, and where before we would just move on, we would progress, society would forget about these things, but now we have absolutely unfettered access to everything that has ever happened, and we do try to judge it based on today's standards, which is just not, it's not plausible. It's not something you actually can do, because it was 40, 50, 60, 100 years ago. I mean, if you bring up like the Jimmy Page that you just brought up, back in the 1800s, it was normal for a 15-year-old girl to marry a 35-year-old man. So are we going to say they were all just horrible pedophile people? I mean, it's a different standard.
I have a,
we know that's wrong.
You don't even have to go that far. I have friends in high school who dated when she was 16 and he was 19. But when we were growing up, that was okay. Like, it was not frowned upon. You know what I mean? Like, so now I saw the other day, we're celebrating their wedding anniversary, and they posted their age and when they met and whatever. What am I going to go back and tell the guy, oh, you're a pedophile because you dated your wife when she was 6? Come on, like, let's have let's use our better judgment here. Like, not everything is black and white. If there's one thing that we've learned, or we should have learned, is that there is a lot of different shades of gray, at least 50.
At least.
At least 50. And I think this is like my biggest pet peeve, because, like, sometimes my son, before we do a video, is like, be careful with what you say, because we don't edit anything, we don't cut anything. And he's like, one of these days you're going to say something and we're going to get canceled. I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit. First of all, we don't monetize. We don't make any money on this. It's a complete hobby for us. So I'm always going to speak my mind, and regardless of what the topic is, I'm going to say what I think, what I believe in, and that's not to say that my beliefs are 100% true and I own the truth. No, but it's my truth. It's my reality, and I just always believe in giving people a little bit of the benefit of the doubt and putting things into the context in which the things happened. you know, and not just take everything for face value.
I can agree with that. Aaliyah, did you have anything further you wanted to ask on that, now that I've taken us totally off the rails?
No, it's a great topic. I think
Cool.
that a lot of good stuff has been said.
Cool.
Changing gears entirely from the ethical discussion. You guys record, I mean, you used to, I don't know if this is still your schedule. You record 3 videos a day, or sorry, 3 videos 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And because you mentioned before, it's because the setup would just be too involved for recording 1 video a day. Could you give us a little sort of bird's eye view of what the timeline looks like on a day that you're recording?
Wow, it's gotten a lot crazier now because Antonio is working at Tim Hortons, an old-fashioned Canadian institution. You know, and by the way, there's some Tim bits coming out with Bieber on it. But anyways, it's not important, I guess. But maybe if you're a Bieber fan, you can get Bieber balls because they're Tim bits. So you can get Bieber balls. You can get a full mouth of Bieber balls.
I'm gonna mail you some Bieber balls, Pedro.
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting for the November 29th is when it comes out, so you can get a full mouth of Bieber balls then. So, you know, it's just around the corner. So he's working now, so that kind of puts a strain on our schedule. So normally we tend to record around 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, unless something is happening, then we kind of have to shift the day around. We normally start recording at 4, and we go until we're done. Most of the times we do 3 videos, 3 and 3, but because of his work now, because of like this week, you know, we're going to some shows, so we don't have the same amount of time. Sometimes we squeeze in 4 videos in one day. We don't like to do that because we both feel like when 3 videos is really should be the limit, because if you start to go into 4 videos, it starts to become not as organic. You start to feel like it's a job and, oh, okay, we just have to record another one. And then we don't really put our full capacity into what we're doing. We're not perhaps paying as much attention to the song. And then the video content in terms of the feedback that we give at the end of the video is not the same because it feels a little bit more laborious. So we feel that 3 videos keeps us fresh, keeps us excited. I also picked 3 videos for that day that have discrepancies between them. So it's not like we're going to do 3 black metal videos on one day or 3, because then it becomes a little bit monotonous. It feels like we're doing the same thing over and over again. So I try to spice things up and create a nice little playlist for the days we're recording so that we're hyped about each and every single one of the videos that we're doing.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. So how long does the setup take, and setup and tear down for your
Actually, the setup itself doesn't take time because it's permanently set up. So I took over the kitchenette area in my house, and we have 2 floodlights set up. We have the camera on a tripod. The only thing I really have to do is move my birds because I have like 4 birds, a parrot, and 3 budgies. So I have to move them into the basement when we're doing the videos, because otherwise it would sound like we're in the Amazons with all these birds flying around and singing. And because we don't cage them, they're free roaming in the house. I don't believe in caging the birds. Like I want them to be free as I am. So the cage is really just their place of rest where they sleep. But the doors are open, everything is open, so they fly all over. So we bring them in the basement, we lock the door, keep them in the basement so that we can do our video. So it does take a little bit of setup from that perspective. And obviously, like, we have to make sure we lock my wife away somewhere so that she doesn't make noise either. So I haven't been able to afford the serial killer or the hitman yet, so working on it.
Curtis?
I wanted to change the topic just slightly here. Then go ahead. I'll be quiet.
Well, how
the
much
leader.
are you going to change the subject?
Right off the rails. So you just go right back into it, Aaliyah. I'll be quiet.
Okay. I think that when it comes to people aspiring to start a YouTube channel or a reaction channel or doing music reviews, sometimes they can get a little hung up on gear, and it stops them from actually doing anything. What's your opinion on the importance of the quality of your gear?
I think we started off with really cheap stuff, like, because we didn't know if this was going to be something that we were going to be doing for a long time or not. So I understand that if you want to start off slow because you don't want to make a huge investment and then you find out this is not for you, it's almost like anything. Like if you're picking up a guitar for the first time, don't buy a really expensive guitar. Buy something cheap with an amp, get started. Then if you get into it, then you can upgrade. I think reaction videos are the same way. I think you can do them fairly cheap on your cell phone if you want. I think the on the low end, it could be almost costless, really, to get it started. And then if you like it and if it's something that you're getting into and you want to invest a little bit more, then I think you could go down that road. That's how we did it. We started off with a really cheap webcam and a laptop, and then we upgraded to actually like a real camera. Like we got a Canon camera that we record our videos. We got floodlights. We got a nice mic from Rode. So it was a gradual process to get there, because it's not like I'm going to invest like $3,000 in equipment and then 2 weeks down the line my son is like, I really don't want to do this, I'm just going to play some PlayStation. And then I'm like, what the hell, I just spent all this money on nothing.
Yeah. Curtis, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to jump over into a completely another topic. Well, not completely, but sort of. So let's talk about picking videos to react, stuff like that, and picking who you're gonna be covering and stuff like that. So let's say Joe Random Band wants to get your attention, wants to get you to react to a video, and I know you probably get like 100 requests a week. How does Joe Random Band specifically get in front of Pedro to get his agreement to react to their video?
Well, I think the best way to do it is you piss on one of your fans' face during a concert. I mean, if you do that and then you send me an email, we're definitely checking it out. I mean, like, definitely checking it out. Outside of that, it's really hard to answer that question, to be honest with you, because we get at least around 20 to 30 emails a day from bands, PR people, labels, you name it. Maybe even more than that, asking for us to check out a video or something like that. It's really hard to give you an answer that's going to be like, oh, that's going to work. You know what I mean? I hate to say this, but some bands have approached us through Patreon. So they sign up to Patreon and then they requested themselves on Patreon for us to check them out. I appreciate that, because you know what? You're putting your money where your mouth is. Like, you know what I mean? So I was like, fuck, now I have, oh, sorry, I cursed. I didn't know if I can curse or not. But anyway,
do it.
So I was like, well, if you're signing up to Patreon and you're paying Patreon, well, now we got to check you guys out. I mean, like, I feel obligated. Now I have to do it. So, that works. That kind of perhaps speeds up the process a little bit from that perspective, because if the band took that kind of approach, they're serious about it. And they're serious about their music as well. So I feel like the least that I can do is definitely check out their video. And then outside of that, I think it comes down to something that it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, which is bands only know who you are when they have an album coming out. I think you have to build relationships way before that album comes out. And I think you'll have to build those relationships with perhaps that goal in mind. I'm not naive to think that otherwise, but at least wine and dine me before you want to screw me. You know what I mean? Like, there's a little bit of foreplay involved that I think it's necessary. So if you only send me a message or an email 2 days before your album comes out and you expect us to check out the video or whatever the case might be, I don't think that's the right approach. We have bands that we've known for a long time, and they've been in touch with us for a long time, even when they're not releasing anything. And I always tend to give those bands a little bit more of attention. There's bands who've sent us, a care package with a few T-shirts and this kind of stuff, even without us checking anything. They're just like, we like what you guys are doing. Give me your address. I'm going to send you some T-shirts. Guess what? A year from now, if they're releasing an album and they have a video and they want us to check it out, we're going to check it out, because they did something for us. Now it's time for me to do something for them. You feel a little bit not obligated, but it's like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of thing. And I just feel that bands that don't know who you are, who don't comment on anything that you do, who don't send you a message on your birthday on Facebook. I'm not saying that I need one, but just saying, like, I mean, if you don't cultivate the relationship with that person, don't expect that person to then do something for you when you need it. It just doesn't work that way. At the end of the day, this is a business, and I think you need to treat it as such. Like, you play 4 shows in Toronto. Not once you ever said, hey, come to the show, we'll put you on the guest list. But then every time you're releasing a video, you're sending me a message.
Yeah.
I think you have to treat it as a business, because that's what it is.
I agree.
And be smart about it. Build a roadmap of what you want to achieve. Specifically, if you don't have a PR team and you're handling everything on your own and you're doing kind of everything on your own, know that you have a schedule in mind and start building the relationships in advance, not waiting for that time.
Totally. And then one last question, because I know this has come up quite a bit, and this isn't always possible to get it to you in advance, but how soon in advance do you want the video to be able to react to it?
If that helps a lot, right? Like if we're doing some, we have a really tight schedule. Let's put it that way. We have a really tight schedule. We have a lot of requests. So if there's a band that we like, or if there's a band that that is interested in us working with them or whatever, having the video ahead of time for us to do it and having the flexibility of when we can post it gives us a little bit more freedom. It's happened a few times, even with bands that you guys work with getting the video in advance in order for us to slot it for a certain day makes a little bit more sense for us so that we can record it ahead of time. Because this week we have a little bit more of a free schedule than we do the next week. So stuff like that really helps. There's no set date in stone that it's better than the other. But that kind of stuff really helps. And once again, I think you'll have to build what you want to, like, what do you want to achieve, and build those relationships. Don't think that, people are going to do you a solid just because, you know what I mean? Build the relationship.
I agree. So we got time for one more question from Aaliyah.
Oh, well, as usual, I wrote way too many questions, and to choose one under pressure like this is quite difficult.
You got this. I believe in you.
I think my question that I want to know the most about is what has been the most shocking or beautiful or striking music video that you've watched. You watch a lot of videos. Tell us what makes it special.
That's a really tough question. What was the most striking, beautiful? I don't even know if
shocking.
I don't even know if I can answer that question. I think if I have to, I'm going to try to answer that question without answering that question. The band that has impacted me the most in recent history is Lord of the Lost. Their latest album, Judas, is absolutely outstanding. Every single video that they've released for that album has been just incredibly done. And the video doesn't necessarily represent what the music is talking about, which makes the videos even more appealing to me. And I think they've created a completely different art form within the music video idea, which is that the video could be telling a story while the music is telling a completely different story, and the two are able to coexist with one another by creating some weird parallel universe where you can tie in a little bit of something with a little bit of something else. So it's almost like there's three layers. There's the video, there's the music, and then in between is those few Easter eggs that actually connect the two together, that only the diehard fans could really pick them apart and understand where they are. I think they're in a group all of their own as far as that kind of thought process idea is concerned. You don't see them releasing visualizers and lyric videos, which I absolutely hate. Imagine back in the day sitting down to watch MTV Headbangers Ball and there's a visualizer on your screen. You would lose your marbles. So I'm not a big fan of that. So I honestly think they're always pushing the envelope. If you look at the latest video, Constellation, the fact that they bring up topics of homosexuality and that kind of stuff into the picture, they're never afraid of that. They're not afraid of going there, even before it was perhaps as acceptable as it is today, because it's a lot more acceptable now. But they've never been afraid of that, even when perhaps it wasn't acceptable. So they've always been a band that's done their own thing. I applaud them for that. And with their videos, the videos are thought-provoking. They're not like shocking. It's not like going back to the peeing incident. It's not like they're peeing on somebody in a video, but the videos are thought-provoking because you're watching the video and you're like, this song has nothing to do with what I'm watching, but what I'm watching is super intriguing. And then the more you watch it, the more you find those Easter eggs that tie them together. And you're like, you know what? There is some tie-ins between the song and the video. And And then not only that, but even from video to video, there's Easter eggs that connect previous videos with current videos. I think they're just phenomenal. Like right now, I don't think there's any band that even comes close to using the medium of a music video as well as they are doing right now.
Cool. So I think that's all we got time for, Pedro. So we're going to end off, and obviously we're going to have you back at some point in the future again. Who knows when, but probably in the next few months, obviously. So thank you very much for coming on once again. And with that, party on, Corey.
Party on, everybody.